The warning sirens screamed across the mining colony like dying animals. Commander Tejo pressed his face against the command center window and watched his world burn. The crystalline creatures moved like living glass across the settlement, their sharp bodies cutting through metal walls as if they were paper. Everything they touched turned gray and crumbled to dust. "Sir, the North Shield generator is gone," reported Captain Jinwoo from his station. His voice stayed calm, but sweat dripped down his blue-scaled face. The creatures broke through the barrier. "They're heading for the residential blocks." Tejo closed his eyes. His mother's human features mixed with his father's Valtharian blood had always made him different. The other officers called him half-breed behind his back. But today nobody cared about his mixed heritage. Today they all faced death together. "How many evacuation ships made it out?" Tejo asked. 3 out of 15, Dr. Somin answered from her science station. Her long fingers moved over the controls, pulling up data streams. The Devourers destroyed the rest before they could leave the atmosphere. Those things learn fast. They adapted to our energy shields in less than 6 hours. Tejo looked at the main screen. Red dots showed where the crystalline monsters moved through his colony. Each dot represented hundreds of the creatures. They flowed like water, but they ate like hungry beasts. Metal, flesh, energy, nothing stopped them. The colony's advanced weapons barely slowed them down. "What about the defense turrets on the eastern wall?" Jinwoo asked. "Gone. The creatures absorbed the energy from the plasma cannons and grew bigger." Somin's voice shook. "Sir, I've never seen anything like this. These things shouldn't exist. They break every law of biology and physics." The command center shook as something large hit the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. Through the window, Tejo saw a group of miners running across the central plaza. The crystalline creatures followed them like deadly shadows. The miners fired their tools at the monsters, but the energy beams only made the creatures glow brighter. "Sir, we have maybe 2 hours before they reach the command center," Jinwoo said. "Should we prepare the emergency pods?" Tejo laughed, but it sounded bitter. "With what ships?" "The Devourers will catch any pod we launch. We've seen what happens to anything that tries to fly." On the screen, the security cameras showed the creatures breaking into the medical center. The building's walls dissolved like sugar in rain. Inside, people screamed and ran, but there was nowhere to go. The colony had become a trap. "The main reactor is holding," reported Engineer Huang from the back of the room. "But if those things reach the power core, the explosion will destroy everything for 50 kilometers. Somin looked up from her station. "Sir, the Devourers are different from any life form in our database. They eat energy and matter, but they also seem to communicate. Look at this." She put the creature movement patterns on the main screen. The red dots moved in organized groups. They surrounded buildings in perfect formations. "They cut off escape routes with military precision." "They're hunting us," Tejo said quietly. "Not just eating, hunting." "Sir, incoming message from the capital," Communications Officer Yu Jin called out. "Admiral Keth wants a status report." Tejo almost laughed again. The capital world was 40 light years away. Any help would take weeks to arrive. By then, the colony would be nothing but empty gray dust. "Tell the Admiral we're holding our position," Tejo said. "Don't mention how bad things really are. Let him think we have time." Yu Jin nodded and turned back to her communications panel. Tejo knew it was a lie, but he didn't want panic to spread to other colonies. Let them prepare their defenses. Maybe they would do better. Another explosion shook the building. This time, the lights flickered. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. On the screens, Tejo could see the creatures had reached the industrial sector. They flowed over the mining equipment like hungry water. "Sir," Somin said softly, "I'm reading massive energy buildup in the creature formations. I think they're preparing for a final assault." Tejo stared at the screen. In a few hours, everyone he commanded would be dead. The colony his people had built over 20 years would disappear. The Valtharian Empire would lose another outpost to these impossible monsters. He thought about his mother. She had died when he was young, but he remembered her stories about Earth. She told him about humans who never gave up, even when everything looked hopeless. She said humans had a saying, "Never leave a friend behind." The colony wasn't full of friends. Most of the people here barely tolerated him because of his mixed blood, but they were still his people. His responsibility. Tejo walked to the emergency communications panel. The system could send messages across the galaxy, but it used old frequencies that most civilized species had abandoned long ago. The Valtharian military considered it beneath their dignity to call for help from primitive worlds. "Sir, what are you doing?" Jinwoo asked. "Something my mother would do," Tejo replied. He activated the ancient beacon system. I'm sending a distress call on all primitive frequencies. Sir, that's against regulations, Yujin said. We're not supposed to contact lesser species during military operations. Look around, Teho pointed at the screen showing his dying colony. Do you think regulations matter now? He recorded a simple message in the old trade language that most spacefaring species understood. This is Valtharian Colony 77 Alpha. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Our defenses have failed. We need immediate assistance. Any ship, any species, please respond. So-min looked shocked. Sir, you're asking barbarians for help. The Council will never forgive this. The Council can punish me after I'm dead, Teho said. He activated the beacon. The message began broadcasting. Across the galaxy on hundreds of old emergency frequencies. Jinwoo checked his weapons console. Sir, the creatures are moving faster now. They'll be here in 90 minutes. Teho nodded. He had done everything he could. The message was flying through space at light speed, reaching distant worlds. But space was big and most civilized. Species had better things to do than monitor primitive distress channels. He sat in his command chair and watched the red dots on the screen grow closer. Outside, his colony burned. The devourers moved like a crystal tide, consuming everything in their path, but somewhere in the darkness between stars, his mother's people might hear his call, and humans, Teho remembered, never left a friend behind. 3 days had passed since the distress signal went out into space. Commander Teho sat in what remained of the command center, watching the slow death of his colony. The crystalline creatures had taken most of the settlement, but they moved. Differently now? Instead of rushing forward like hungry animals, they seemed to wait. They surrounded the last few buildings like patient hunters. Sir, they're not attacking anymore, Dr. So-min said from her makeshift workstation. Half of her equipment was destroyed, but she kept working. The devourers are just ... watching us. Captain Jinwoo limped over to the main console. A piece. A falling debris had injured his leg 2 days ago, but he refused to rest. Maybe they're full. Maybe they ate enough. Teho didn't believe that. Through the cracked windows, he could see the creatures moving in slow circles around the command center. Their crystal bodies caught the light from the dying fires across the colony. They looked beautiful and terrible at the same time. Sir, Communications Officer Yujin called out suddenly. Her voice sounded strange. I'm picking up something on the long-range sensors. More devourers? Jinwoo asked. No, sir. Ships, multiple. Contacts approaching our system. Teho felt his heart jump. Valtharian rescue fleet? Yujin stared at her readings. Sir, these ships, they're not Valtharian. The engine signatures are completely wrong. And they're moving too slow? So-min moved to the sensor station. Let me see those readings. She studied the data for several minutes, her face growing more confused. These ships are using primitive fusion drives. No civilization has used technology. This basic for over 300 years. Could they be pirates? Jinwoo suggested. Pirates don't travel in formations this large, Yujin said. I count at least 30 ships, maybe more. Teho felt something cold in his stomach. 30 ships meant a full invasion force, but who would want to invade a dead colony? And what species still used fusion drives? Sir, incoming transmission. Yujin announced, it's on the emergency frequency. The same one you used for the distress call. The main screen flickered to life. Static filled the display for a moment, then cleared to show a human face. The man had dark hair streaked with gray and tired eyes. His uniform looked practical rather than elegant, nothing like the ceremonial dress of Valtharian officers. This is Admiral Kyung-Soo Park of the Human Defense Fleet, the man said in accented but clear trade language. We received your distress call 3 days ago. We're approaching your system now. Please respond if anyone is still alive down there. The command center fell silent. So-min's mouth opened, but no words came out. Jinwoo stared at the screen like he was seeing a ghost. Yujin's hands shook over her controls. Humans? So-min whispered, that's impossible. Humans barely have spaceflight. They've never left their home system. Teho looked at the human admiral on the screen. The man's face reminded him of his mother. That same determined expression when things got difficult. That same refusal to quit, open a channel, Teho ordered. Sir. Are you sure? Jinwoo asked. Humans are... they're primitives. What could they possibly do to help us? They came, Teho said simply. No one else did. Yujin activated the communication system. Teho stepped in front of the camera, suddenly aware of how terrible he must look. 3 days without sleep. His uniform torn and dirty, his mixed features showing exhaustion. Admiral Park, this is Commander Teho of Colony 77 Alpha. We didn't expect anyone to respond to our signal. The human admiral's tired face showed something that might have been a smile. Well, Commander, you called for help. We came as fast as we could. What's your situation down there? We're under attack by hostile creatures. They've destroyed most of our colony. Our defenses failed. We have maybe 100 survivors left. Admiral Park nodded like this was normal news. Understood. We're 2 hours out from your planet. Ken, you hold that long? Teho looked around the damaged command center. Outside, the crystal creatures waited in their patient circles. I think so. But Admiral, you should know these creatures are unlike anything we've encountered. They consume energy and matter. Our most advanced weapons were useless. Noted, Park said. We'll figure something out. Humans are good at figuring things out. The communication ended. Teho stared at the blank screen, not sure if he should feel hope or horror. Humans had never fought in a real war. Their weapons were hundreds of years behind Valtharian technology. What could they do against creatures that had destroyed his colony's advanced defenses? Sir, I'm getting better readings on those human ships, So-Min reported. These aren't military vessels. I'm seeing converted cargo haulers, mining ships, even what looks like passenger transports. Jinwoo laughed, but it sounded bitter. They sent merchants and miners to rescue us. This is how we end, saved by primitives with cargo ships. Yujin was studying her console more carefully. Sir, some of these ships have very strange energy readings. The weapon signatures don't match anything in our database. Because they're primitive weapons, Jinwoo said. Kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives, Stone Age technology. Teho watched the sensor readings showing the approaching human fleet. The ships moved in a loose formation that looked almost casual compared to Valtharian military precision. But they kept coming. 30 ships full of humans who had traveled for 3 days to answer a distress call from strangers. Sir, the creatures are moving, So-Min announced. They're pulling back from the command center. On the screens, Teho could see the crystalline devours flowing away from the remaining buildings. They moved toward the edge of the colony like a retreating tide. Why are they leaving? Jinwoo asked. Maybe they sense the incoming ships, So-Min suggested. Maybe they're preparing to attack the humans when they arrive. Teho felt sick. These humans had come to help, and they were flying into a trap. Their primitive ships and ancient weapons wouldn't stand a chance against the devourers. The creatures would consume the entire human fleet before the humans even understood what they were fighting. Yujin, open a channel to the human fleet, Teho ordered. Sir? I need to warn them. Tell them what they're really facing. But as Teho watched the sensors, he saw something that made him pause. The human ships weren't slowing down as they approached the planet. If anything, they seemed to be speeding up, accelerating toward danger instead of running away from it. Maybe, Teho thought, remembering his mother's stories, humans really were different from every other species in the galaxy. Maybe they were crazy enough to fight impossible battles. Maybe that was exactly what his dying colony needed. The human fleet arrived like a storm made of metal and fire. Admiral Kyungsoo Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, a converted cargo hauler called Soul's Pride, and studied the planet below. The surface looked like someone had taken a beautiful garden and covered it with gray ash. What do you think, Haijin? Park asked his chief engineer. Engineer Haijin Martinez wiped grease from her hands and looked at the sensor readings. Those crystal things are big, Admiral, really big. And they're everywhere. Can we hurt them? Oh, we can hurt anything, Haijin grinned. Question is whether it'll stay hurt, Park nodded. He had fought in 3 wars and learned one important lesson. Every enemy could be beaten if you hit them the right way. The trick was figuring out what the right way looked like. Rem, what do you see down there? Park asked. Colonel Bioram Singh was studying the tactical display. Her Marines were already suited up and ready to drop. The aliens are trapped in one small area. The crystal creatures have them surrounded, but they're not attacking? That's weird. Maybe. They're saving them for dessert, suggested Captain Dalho Kim from the navigation station. Park shook his head. No, these creatures are smart. They're waiting for something. Probably waiting for us. Double quotes. The communication system crackled. Commander Teho's voice came through, sounding desperate. Admiral Park, you need to stay away from the planet. These creatures will destroy your ships. They absorb energy weapons and grow stronger. Thanks for the warning, Commander, Park replied. But we didn't come all this way just to watch you die. Admiral, you don't understand. We had plasma cannons, energy shields, the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Nothing worked. Park looked at Haijin, who was already smiling. Commander, did you try hitting them with something really old and really stupid? Silence on the channel, Then Tejo's confused voice, "What do you mean?" "Hyjin, show them what we brought," Park said. The engineer activated the external cameras. On the screen, the colonists could see the human ships up close. The vessels looked like they had been built in someone's garage. Thick armor plates were welded over cargo bay doors. Strange weapons stuck out from hull modifications that definitely violated safety regulations. "Those are kinetic cannons," Hyjin explained cheerfully. "Basically, we shoot very heavy things very fast. No energy, no fancy technology. Just physics. And bad attitude." Dr. Somin's voice came over the radio. "But kinetic weapons are primitive. No civilized species has used them for centuries." "Yeah, well, we're not very civilized," Park said. "But, are your Marines ready?" "Born ready, sir, but how are we getting down there? Those creatures will tear apart any dropship." Hyjin held up a remote control device. "That's where my babies come in. Electromagnetic pulse generators. I built them from cargo ship engines. They should scramble anything that uses crystalline neural networks." Park loved working with Hyjin. Give her some spare parts and a welding torch, and she could build weapons that made engineers from advanced civilizations cry. "All ships, this is Admiral Park," he announced on the fleet channel. "We're going to do this the human way. Fast. Loud and probably stupid. Hyjin, light them up." The engineer pressed her button. Invisible waves of electromagnetic energy pulsed from the human ships toward the planet. On the surface, something amazing happened. The crystalline creatures suddenly stopped moving. They stood frozen like statues made of glass. It worked. Tejo's voice shouted over the radio. "The creatures aren't moving. How long will it last?" Park asked Hyjin. "Maybe 20 minutes, maybe 5. The pulse generators are running hot." "Then we better move fast." All ships attack pattern Alpha. "Let's show these crystals how humans say hello." The Soul's Pride dove toward the planet like a falling star. Behind her, 29 other human ships followed in a formation that would have given any military academy instructor nightmares. They didn't fly in perfect lines or maintain proper spacing. They flew like angry wasps heading for a fight. The first kinetic rounds hit the crystalline creatures 60 seconds later, where energy weapons had been absorbed and made the creatures stronger. The simple metal projectiles smashed through crystal bodies like hammers through glass. Pieces of the Devourers flew in all directions. "Direct hits on multiple targets," reported Weapons Officer Jin-Ho Reeves. "The kinetics are working, sir." But the creatures were learning fast. The electromagnetic pulse was already wearing off. The Devourers began to move again, flowing toward the landing zones where BORAM's Marines were dropping from the sky. "Colonel Singh, you have incoming hostiles." Park warned. BORAM's voice came back calm and steady. "Copy that, Admiral." "We see them. Marines, remember your training. These things eat energy, so we go old school. Rifles, grenades, and pointy sticks if we have to." The Marines hit the ground running. Instead of the sleek energy weapons used by advanced civilizations, they carried chemical explosive rifles and kinetic shotguns. Their armor was thick metal plates instead of energy shields. They looked like ancient warriors compared to Veltharian soldiers, but they fought like demons. The first group of crystal creatures flowed toward the Marines like living water. The humans opened fire with weapons that hadn't changed much in 500 years. Bullets and explosive shells tore through crystalline bodies. Where the creatures tried to absorb energy, they found only metal and chemistry. "This is impossible," Dr. Somin's voice said over the radio. "Those weapons shouldn't work. They're too primitive." "Sometimes primitive is exactly what you need," Park replied, watching his Marines advance across the colony. "Complex problems don't always need complex solutions." Engineer Hyjin was working frantically at her station. "Admiral, the pulse generators are overheating. I can give you maybe 5 more minutes. That's all we need." "BORAM, can you reach the command center?" "Already on our way, sir." "These crystal things are tough, but they shatter real nice when you hit them with enough force." Park watched the tactical display as his Marines fought their way through the colony. The crystalline creatures were dangerous, but they had adapted to fight energy-based civilizations. They had no defense against humans who solved problems by hitting them with heavy objects at high speed. "Commander Tejo, we're coming to get you," Park announced. "Stay put and keep your heads down." "Admiral," Tejo's voice was filled with wonder. "How are you doing this? How are primitive weapons working when our advanced technology failed?" Park thought about that question while he watched his people fight. Impossible odds with determination and jury-rigged equipment. "Commander, sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to ignore what everyone says is impossible and just try. Something stupid, but that makes no sense." "Welcome to humanity," Park said with a grin. We specialize in things that make no sense. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the elegant council chambers of the Veltharian capital, Ambassador Duyan Quell stood before a room full of angry politicians. Her blue skin had turned pale, and her hands shook as she read from the official report. According to Commander Tejo's testimony, she said, the human fleet destroyed the Devourer threat in less than 4 hours. Total human casualties, 12 wounded, 0 dead. They rescued all 93 surviving colonists. Elder Nayang Zephy's, leader of the Galactic Council, leaned forward in her crystalline chair. Her ancient face showed disbelief. Ambassador Quell, please repeat that. Did you say 0 human deaths? Yes, Elder, the humans lost no lives during the rescue operation. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives from a dozen species shouted questions and accusations. How could primitive humans succeed where the advanced Veltharian military had failed? How could creatures that destroyed energy-based weapons be defeated by ancient kinetic technology? This makes no sense, declared Senator Minho Grack, his tentacles waving in agitation. Humans barely understand faster-than-light travel. They have no military experience beyond their own small planet. How did they even reach the colony? Ambassador Quell pulled up the fleet records on the main display. According to our analysis, the humans converted cargo ships and mining vessels into military transports. They traveled for 3 days using basic fusion drives to reach Colony 77 Alpha. 3 days? Elder Zephy's looked shocked. Our fastest military ships would take 2 weeks to make that journey. The humans pushed their engines far beyond safe limits, Quell explained. They risked catastrophic failure to arrive quickly. Captain Subin Reeves of the Human Diplomatic Corps sat quietly in the observer section. She had arrived on the same ship as the rescue fleet, but her job was different. While Admiral Park fought monsters, Subin dealt with politics. And politics, she was learning, could be just as dangerous as crystal creatures. Captain Reeves, Elder Zephy's addressed her directly. Perhaps you can explain how your species accomplished this impossible rescue. Subin stood up slowly. She wore a simple blue uniform instead of the elaborate robes favored by other diplomats. Elder Zephy's, with respect, there was nothing impossible about it. Someone called for help, we came to help. That's what people do. But your weapons, Senator Grack protested. Kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives are barbaric. How could such primitive tools defeat the Devourers? Sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution, Subin replied. The Devourers were adapted to fight energy weapons. They had no defense against old-fashioned bullets and bombs. Elder Zephy's studied the human captain carefully. Captain Reeves, your species was classified as pre-space flight less than 50 years ago. Our records show humans have barely explored beyond your home system. Yet now you're conducting military operations across the galaxy, Subin smiled. Elder, your records might be a little out of date. That was an understatement. While the Galactic Council had been ignoring humanity, humans had been busy. They built faster ships, developed new technologies, and explored dozens of star systems. But they did it quietly, without asking permission or announcing their progress to advanced civilizations. Captain, Elder Zephy's continued, the Galactic Council must review humanity's status. A species capable of defeating the Devourers cannot remain classified as primitive. What does that mean? Subin asked. Ambassador Quell answered first. It means humanity will be invited to join the Galactic Council as an equal member. You'll have voting rights, trade agreements, and military treaties. Subin looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring at her. Some looked curious. Others looked worried. A few looked scared. What if we don't want to join? She asked. The chamber fell silent. In the entire history of the Galactic Council, no species had ever refused membership. Being part of the Council meant access to advanced technology, protection from hostile forces, and trade with hundreds of worlds. Why would you refuse? Elder Zephy's asked. Because joining means following your rules, Subin said simply. And your rules say we can't help people like Commander Tejo's colony without permission. Senator Grack's tentacles curled in anger. The rules exist to maintain order. Without proper authority, military actions lead to chaos and war. The rules also mean people die while bureaucrats argue about jurisdiction, Subin shot back. Commander Tejo sent a distress call. By the time your council approved a rescue mission, everyone on that colony would be dead. Ambassador Quell looked uncomfortable. Captain, surely you understand the need for proper procedures. I understand that 93 people are alive today because humans don't wait for permission to do the right thing. Across the galaxy, other species were having similar conversations. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, merchants gathered in the Great Market to discuss the rumors. Could humans really travel faster than anyone thought possible? Did they have secret weapons that could defeat any enemy? Commander Jinho Velk of the Altarian Defense Force read the official reports 3 times before believing them. The Altarians prided themselves on their military prowess, but even they had lost colonies to devour attacks. How had primitive humans succeeded where trained soldiers failed? "Sir," his aide asked, "should we contact the human fleet? Perhaps arrange joint training exercises?" Vel considered this carefully. "No, not yet. But start monitoring human space activities. I want to know everything about their capabilities." Similar orders went out from military headquarters across the galaxy. Intelligence services that had ignored humanity for decades suddenly wanted detailed reports on human technology, tactics, and intentions. Back on the rescued colony, Commander Tejo walked through the ruins with Admiral Park. Human engineers were already working to repair the damage. They moved quickly and efficiently, turning wreckage into useful materials. "Admiral," Tejo said, "my government wants to know if humans are planning to expand into this sector." Park looked surprised. "Expand?" "Commander, we just came because you asked for help. But now that you're here, will you stay? Will you claim territory?" "Why would we do that?" Park asked. "This is your colony, your home?" "We just helped clean up some unwanted guests." Tejo stared at the human admiral. In his experience, military forces that rescued colonies usually demanded payment or territory in return. But Park seemed genuinely confused by the suggestion. "Admiral, what does humanity want from the galaxy?" Park thought about that question while he watched his people work. "Commander, we want the same thing we've always wanted. To explore, to learn, and to help our neighbors when they need it. That's all." "That's everything," Park said with a smile. "Everything else is just politics." Tejo realized something important in that moment. The galaxy was about to change in ways no one could predict. And it was changing because a species called humanity had decided that helping strangers was more important than following rules. 6 months after the rescue at Colony 7 Alpha, Fleet Admiral Won-Sik Chun stood on the bridge of humanity's newest ship, the Earth's Promise. Around him, holographic displays showed a sight that made his blood run cold. Hundreds of massive ships moved through space toward the galactic core, each one larger than any vessel ever built. "Admiral," reported Captain J. Min Torres from the sensor station. "The long-range scouts confirm it. The ancient fleet is fully active now. Estimated arrival at inhabited systems, 48 hours. Dr. Young-hee Nalix, the expedition's chief scientist, looked up from her research station. Her face was pale. "Admiral, I've finished analyzing the artifacts we found. This fleet was built by something called the Architects. They created it to eliminate what they called chaotic life forms." "What does that mean?" Admiral Chun asked. "Any species that doesn't follow their idea of perfect order," Dr. Nalix explained. "The fleet was programmed to destroy civilizations that show creativity, unpredictability, or rapid adaptation." General Donghayan Torres, the Admiral's military advisor, studied the tactical displays. "In other words, it targets any species that thinks for itself. That's why it's moving now," Dr. Nalix continued. The rescue at the colony created a ripple effect across the galaxy. Sudden changes in technology, politics, and military tactics. The fleet detected this chaos and activated. Admiral Chun felt sick. Humanity's success had triggered this ancient threat. Their refusal to follow galactic rules had painted a target on every living world. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council." Communications Officer Min-Young Park announced. The main screen showed Elder Ne-Young Zephy's looking older and more tired than June had ever seen her. Behind her, representatives from dozens of species argued in panicked voices. "Admiral Chun," Elder Zephy said, "we need humanity's help. Our combined fleets cannot stop this ancient threat. Our weapons and tactics are useless against their technology." "What makes you think we can do better?" Chun asked. "Because you've already done the impossible once," the Elder replied. "You defeated the Devourers when our advanced weapons failed. Perhaps you can find a way to stop this fleet as well." Chun looked around his bridge at the human officers. They were scared, but not panicking. They were already working on solutions, studying data, and preparing for what seemed like an impossible fight. "Elder, what are you asking us to do?" "Lead the combined Galactic Defense Force," Elder Zephy said. "Every species will follow your commands. Use our ships, our weapons, our people however you think best." It was an incredible offer. Humanity would effectively become the military leader of the entire galaxy. But Chun knew the real truth. The other species weren't offering leadership. They were asking humans to perform another miracle. "I'll need complete tactical control," Chun said. "No interference from politicians or military councils?" "Agreed. And if our plan seems crazy or impossible, everyone follows orders anyway." Elder Zephy's nodded. "Admiral, your species has proven that impossible is just another word for difficult. We trust your judgment." The communication ended. Chun turned to his staff. "Well, people, we have 36 hours to figure out how to stop a fleet that's been traveling space for thousands of years. Ideas?" Dr. Nalix raised her hand like a student in class. "Admiral, what if we don't try to destroy the fleet?" "Explain." "The ancient ships are following their original programming. They see chaos and try to eliminate it. But what if we could change their programming instead?" General Torres laughed, but it sounded bitter. "Doctor, those ships are probably protected by security systems we can't even imagine. How do we reprogram something we don't understand?" "The same way we defeated the Devourers," Dr. Nalix said. "We try something the architects never expected." Admiral Chun felt a familiar excitement. The feeling he got when facing an impossible problem that might have a stupid solution. "Go on, Doctor." "The architects built this fleet to eliminate chaos. But they never encountered anything like humanity. We don't just create chaos, we thrive in it, we turn chaos into solutions. So we do what humans do best. We board their ships and hack their systems the old-fashioned way." The bridge fell. Silent. Captain Torres was the first to speak. "Doctor, that's completely insane." "Yes," Dr. Nalix smiled. "That's what makes it perfect." Admiral Chun studied the tactical display showing the approaching ancient fleet. The ships were massive, heavily armed, and protected by technology that had survived thousands of years in space. Trying to board them would be suicide, unless you were human. "General Torres, how many Marines do we have in the combined fleet?" "About 50,000, sir. Mixed species, but trained for zero-gravity combat." "Not enough," Chun said. "But we don't need an army. We need engineers, hackers, and people crazy enough to break into alien computers." "Sir, we're not going to fight these ships. We're going to steal them." The plan that Admiral Chun presented to the Galactic Fleet commanders was so audacious that several alien officers fainted when they heard it. Instead of attacking the ancient fleet with weapons, humanity would use captured Devourer technology to create massive electromagnetic pulse bombs. The pulses would disable the ancient ship's defenses long enough for boarding parties to reach their computer cores, but the real genius of the plan was what happened next. Instead of trying to destroy the ancient programming, human hackers would add new instructions to it. They would teach the fleet that chaos wasn't something to be eliminated, but something to be protected. "You want to reprogram 10,000 ancient warships?" Elder Zephy's asked during the final briefing. "Not reprogram," Chun corrected. "Educate. We're going to show them that chaos creates life, art, and progress. That diversity makes civilizations stronger, not weaker." "And if this fails?" Admiral Chun looked at the assembled fleet commanders. Humans, Veltharians, Altarians, and dozens of other species working together for the first time in galactic history. "If this fails, at least we'll go down fighting together." The battle lasted 18 hours. Human boarding pods, protected by jury-rigged shields and powered by desperation, crashed through the ancient ship's defenses. Engineers and hackers fought their way to computer cores that hadn't been touched in millennia. Captain Subin Reeves led the assault on the fleet's command ship. As alarms screamed around her, she plugged human computers into alien systems that were older than Earth civilization. The virus her team uploaded wasn't designed to destroy the ancient programming, but to expand it. The virus carried the complete history of galactic civilization, art, music, literature, scientific discoveries, and the rescue at Colony 77 Alpha. It showed the ancient fleet what life really looked like when species were free to grow and change. When the ancient computers finished processing this new information, something unprecedented happened. The massive fleet stopped moving toward inhabited worlds and began broadcasting a message across the galaxy. New parameters accepted. Chaos is not the enemy of order, but its greatest teacher. Mission updated. Protect life that creates, explores, and helps others. Admiral Chun stood on his bridge and watched as the ancient fleet changed course, moving toward the galaxy's edge to begin a new mission, protecting young civilizations instead of destroying them. "Admiral," Dr. Nalix said quietly, "what did we just do?" Chun smiled as he watched human and alien crews working together, celebrating their impossible victory. "We did what humans always do, Doctor. We turned a problem into a solution, and we made some new friends along the way." In the years that followed, the galaxy would remember this day not as the moment humanity saved everyone, but as the moment everyone learned that the impossible was just another word for difficult. And that sometimes the best way to solve any problem was to call someone who didn't know it couldn't be done.